Greetings everyone, Slizzle466 here, and in today's video, we're looking at the very first Wild Hearthstone Community Meta Report. This is a community-driven meta report where everyone's opinion is heard. We had 331 people responding to the survey, and the questions they had to answer were, what is the main region that they play Hearthstone on? Americas, Europe, Asia, or China? What is their usual rank at the end of each month? So I broke this down into bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Diamond got broken into ranks 10 to 6 and 5 to 1. And legend was broken into 10-star bonus players and 11-star bonus players. Then, based on deck archetypes that have been showing up in various meta reports, such as Tempo Storm and Vicious Syndicate, players were then asked to rate specific deck archetypes based on what tier they think it belongs in. These ranged from tier 1 high, tier 1 low, down to tier 4 high, tier 4 low, and then tier 5, which is basically saying this shouldn't be on the meta report. Now you'll notice that there are no mid ranks for the tiers here, and initially there were mid ranks in the survey, but this required people to have to scroll down and scroll across to access those buttons, and most players didn't even notice those buttons were there, which meant initially on the pilot survey, only tiers 1 to 3 were being chosen. So this was the best way to make it easy for everyone to fill out the survey. Now looking at the demographics of this meta report, we have 50.2% of respondents playing on the Americas server, 47.1% maining the Europe server. We had a very small amount from the Asia server, and I think we had one person respond from the China server. As for the distribution of ranks, what we see here is we have 23.9% of respondents being Legend 11-star bonus players, 34.4% being Legend 10-star bonus players, 28.7% being Diamond 5 to 1 players, and pretty small percentages for everything else. So what I've done in this analysis is I've lumped together all of the ranks that are Diamond 6 down to Bronze 10 and just treating them all as one population. So here we are at the Wild Hearthstone Community Meta Report number 1 tier list, starting with looking at all of the respondents. So over all of the respondents, they said that now, based on the survey data that I received, I then quantified it and applied statistical analyses techniques to generate tier lists for different groups of respondents. So the first tier list we're looking at here is for all of the responses. So overall, everyone says Darkglare Warlock is the best deck in Wild, followed by Handbuff Paladin, both in tier 1. Moving to tier 2, you can see there's everyone's lovely favorite Secret Mage, followed by Reno Priest, Pirate Warrior, which I find is very underplayed on ladder, so I was surprised to see Pirate Warrior this high, where we don't see many high legend lists. Odd Paladin, Reno Warlock, APM Mage, which I find surprising because the Spring Water nerf was pretty devastating to it. Mizaki Mage just showing up under APM Mage. Aggro Paladin, which would be some sort of Call to Arms style Paladin, and then Murloc Shaman rounding out the bottom of tier 2. When we look at tier 3, considering the general population's hatred towards Big Priest, it's only sitting at the top of tier 3. You've then got Discard Warlock, Cute Warlock, which is a deck where you spam a bunch of 0 mana 1/1s and buff them up a lot. Kingsbane Rogue, Odd Demon Hunter, Reno Mage. Keep in mind Reno Mage could be Luna's Pocket Galaxy, it could be N'Zoth, there could be some Control Reno Mage, lots of variants in there. Aggro Druid, Control Warlock, which is basically Cube Lock but not running Cube. Odd Warrior, Exodia Mage, which would be the Archmage Antonidas version, whether you use the quest or not. Reno Shaman, again, lots of variants of Reno Shaman available. Looking at tier 4, you've got Cube Warlock, Mill Rogue, Odd Rogue, which hurts my heart, being my favorite deck, Reno Hunter, Malagos Druid, whoever thought we'd see Even Shaman at the bottom of tier 4, and finally, Jade Druid. Now we look at the tier lists for the 11-star legend players and the 10-star legend players. So we had 79 11-star legend players, 114 10-star legend players. And the striking difference here is that 11-star players believe that Darkglare Warlock is the only tier 1 deck. There's a big enough gap between Darkglare and Warlock and Handbuff Paladin, according to them, knocking Handbuff Paladin into tier 2. You'll notice that there's a swap between the power level of Reno Priest Secret Mage and Secret Mage Reno Priest between the 11-star and 10-star players. There's also a switch between Odd Paladin Pirate Warrior between the two sets here. You'll notice that the 11-star players value Pirate Warrior a little lower in the low tier 2, whereas the 10-star players are valuing it in the high tier 2. There's no Reno lock in here for tier 2 compared to 10-star. Same thing with Murloc Shaman, APM Mage, Aggro Paladin, Discard Warlock. And what this is basically telling you is that the best decks in Wild are incredibly strong. The 11-star players know this, and they know that if they want to get their high ranks, they need to play exactly these decks. You'll also notice the cute Warlock is in here at tier 2, because this deck is sleeper OP. Many people are not playing it, but it is being played at High Legend quite a lot. You notice for the 10-star players, there's a lot more variety in tier 2, and this is typically because they will ladder better with a larger variety of decks, but they don't get up to those really high ranks, really high MMRs that give them that 11-star bonus. Looking at tier 3 and tier 4, you'll notice that here is the Reno lock from the 11-star players, so they put it in tier 3. They also put APM Mage in high tier 3, compared to 10-star putting it in low tier 2. And I believe the 11-star players are correct here. APM Mage really isn't that good right now. Same thing here with the 10-stars. The 10-stars are putting APM Mage above Mozaki, where I believe they're incorrect. Mozaki is definitely a better deck than APM Mage. We've got Kingsbane Rogue in the same spot. Looking at Big Priest, we've got Big Priest at kind of mid-ish tier 3, high tier 3 for the 10-star players. But otherwise, these are all roughly in the same position. There's nothing too fancy about the tier 3, tier 4 decks, but it is just really interesting to note the discrepancies between tier 1 and tier 2 between the 11-star and the 10-star players. So let's look at the larger population of Wild players. So although there is a much larger pool of players in the Diamond 5 to Bronze 10 range, these sort of players typically aren't that active on Twitter. They may not necessarily look into meta reports that much. And I got some messages from some of them personally just saying, I don't think my opinion is of value for this report. And to that I say, your opinion is of value, and it's really important that we get responses from people of any rank, regardless of what they are. Now, what is really interesting here is the Diamond 5 to D1 players. There were 95 of them. They were the only group that rated Handbuff Paladin as not just the best deck, but the only tier 1 deck. Darkglare Warlock popping in at the top of tier 2. And I find this quite fascinating because Darkglare Warlock is completely broken. And typically these are the players that every month, they'll get to Diamond 5, they try to get their run to Legend, but they can't quite get there, or they just want to get to Diamond 5 and meme around. So it's really interesting to see how they put Darkglare in the top of tier 2. We've then got the Secret Mage, Reno Priest, Odd Paladin, Pirate Warrior. So this seems to be a common pattern between the different sets of responses. This group rates APM Mage quite high, mid to almost high tier 2. Again, I feel like the lower ranks are misevaluating APM Mage. You've got Reno Lock in the middle of tier 2. Keep in mind that this agrees with what the 10-star players say, but the 11-star players think it's tier 3. You got Big Priest in low tier 2. So this is the first time we see Big Priest sneak into tier 2 from the D5 to D1 players. And this I understand because when I make my climb to legend every month, and I usually climb with a 10-star bonus, sometimes 11-star, I see a lot of big priest, and it's really frustrating to lose to it. We see cute warlock in here in tier 2, and I find it interesting that the D5 to D1 players are rating cute warlock higher than the 10-star legend players, with right now the 11-star players rating cute warlock the highest. And then if we look into tier 3 for the D5 to D1 players, it's nothing that fancy. I guess the one thing to note is that tier 4 is kind of slim, because a lot of the people that, this is my assumption, that a lot of the players in the D5 to D1 range, they like to grind these tier 3, tier 4 decks to legend or close to legend, so they might value it a little higher. But then let's look at the D6 to bronze 10 people. So we only had 43 respondents here, so it didn't make sense to break this up into smaller groups because the sample size wasn't big enough to have any sort of statistical confidence. But the lower ranked players, interestingly, like the 11-star ranked players, put Darkglare Warlock as the one and only tier 1 deck. So that I found really interesting. We have the hand buff Paladin in rank 2 here. So basically across the board, except for the D5 to D1, we've got Darkglare followed by hand buff. It's only flipped for the D5 to D1 players. You've then got your Secret Mage, your Reno Priest, APM Mage rated really high. And I think this might be a result of players in this range don't necessarily keep super up to date with the meta snapshots and what's happening on Twitter, the nerfs, things like that. So they're still rating APM Mage really high. In fact, if we look at Mazaki Mage, it's down here in mid tier 2. But I really do think that the 11-star players know what's going on here in regards to APM Mage. You can also see that the Diamond 6 to Bronze 10 players have the highest amount of tier 2 decks, because these are decks that they can typically play and win with and have reasonable success. Interestingly, 10-star was the only group of people that had Cute Warlock in tier 3. Even the D6 to Bronze 10 have Cute Warlock in the bottom of tier 2. As for tier 3 and tier 4, it's nothing particularly fancy. And to finish off, we're going to have a little bit of fun looking at the tier list for the Americas server versus the Europe server. These are two servers that are constantly in clash with each other over opinions. And so let's put their money where their mouth is and compare. Americas, they only rate one tier 1 deck, Darkglare Warlock, as being the deck to beat. This is in alignment with the 11-star legend players. Whereas on Europe, they've got hand buff Paladin sneaking into tier 1. This lines up with the 10-star players. Looking at tier 2, it looks pretty similar at first. You've got your Reno Priest, Secret Mage, Pirate Warrior. But then America server, what are you doing? You rank an APM Mage really high compared to Mazaki Mage. Whereas on EU, they have Mazaki Mage just above APM, which I believe is more correct. Something else to notice here is look at the number of tier 2 decks on Americas compared to the number of tier 2 decks on Europe. And this is just my opinion chiming in here, but as someone who plays on both servers, I find that on Europe there is very little experimentation. People seem to gravitate towards the best decks and just grind them out. Whereas on the Americas server, people play a wider variety of decks, a lot of off-meta meme decks. They get to their legend, but because of that, they value these decks a lot more. So we see a ton in tier 2. One thing else to note here is the Americas server has Cute Warlock in tier 2. And I believe this is one of the sleeper decks, as I mentioned, coming into the meta. Whereas on Europe, we've got Cute Warlock down here in the middle of tier 3. And I think that might be the case where we haven't seen any high-profile EU players spam this up to high legend, at least not to my knowledge. So time will tell, we'll see. But definitely Cute Warlock is being valued much higher on the Americas server right now. Now, because of like this massive discrepancy between the number of tier 2 decks between the two servers, it's kind of hard to say much about the tier 3 and tier 4. But one thing I do want to note is Control Warlock here is at the top of tier 3 for the Americas server, bottom of tier 3 for the Europe server. So that's quite the discrepancy. But otherwise, the tier 4s, they're all kind of similar between all of these classes overall. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's anything you would like me to add to future community meta reports, please let me know. If there's anything you'd like to know from the data that I have available to me, let me know in the comments below. If you want to help support this channel, you can click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and until next time, I hope to see you again.